thanks for being here. I think, as Esther said, this event is all about you and like your contribution, your participation to everything what we are discussing today. And, you know, like last year, I would say, we love, you know, to open the event with a sort of a state of the industry. Although in this case, it's a state of the governments, right? It's a state of like, where are we on the other side? In an attempt to support the industry, what progress has been made, and what else still has to be made. We have a great panel with us today, you know, and we try to cover pretty much the entire verticality, right, from the international level all the way down to the city level and vice versa, right? And we will really want to hear from you, so please use your Slido, etc., to ask questions to the panelists. To understand how we are with the, you know, the different governance layers in the drone ecosystem, and where the blockers and or the challenges lie. So before you know, we go into the conversation, I will ask, you know, everybody to a quick introduction of yourself and, you know, your roles and a bit about yourself. Maybe you can start with you, Darryl, and we go with everybody else.
Hi everyone, thanks Lorenzo and Esther for inviting me. My name's Darryl Abelscroft. I'm Deputy Director in the UK's Department for Transport, responsible for our Future of Aviation division. Oh yeah, here I am with some pictures. From top to bottom, so I have responsibility for the Department for Transport's role in the UK space programme. So that's us with a rocket in early December this year, which for those of you who pay attention to UK space progress, it didn't go quite to plan. But let's move on. Middle there, perhaps more relevant to this discussion, I have responsibility for our Future of Flight team. So that's looking at how we integrate drones and eVTOLs in particular into UK airspace and try to maximize the benefits from those technologies. I also have a kind of wider team responsible for responding to ministerial letters. So when anyone in the UK writes to our minister about aviation matters, that comes to a bit of my team. So yeah, but slightly odd mix. Worth saying, UK on future flight and with drones in particular, we've been on a real journey, but worth just stressing from a kind of national government perspective, the thing we care about with drones is the benefits they bring, whether that's economic or social. How can we use these technologies to unlock productivity benefits, growth benefits, and social benefits for our citizens? And we will. I can talk a bit later about some of the things we're doing to try and deliver that in concert with industry. Anyway, nice to meet you all. Thank you.
Thank you, and Eileen.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the invitation to be on the panel. So I'm Eileen Quinlivan. I'm Assistant Chief Executive with Dublin City Council in Ireland. And I suppose I have many responsibilities, but one of them is the whole digital transformation agenda for the organisation and for our services. So that would include digital public services, smart cities and data and analytics. So I suppose our involvement in drones would stem from the smart cities perspective. There's a huge enthusiasm in the organisation to embrace drones when they became more accessible. So from a smart cities perspective, we wanted to look and see what's the most effective use of them for public service, and how can we actually identify what's the potential and how we can actually use drones ourselves in our own service delivery, but also what's the future of the city with drones as an integrated part of it, and how we can support that whole ecosystem development. So the first on the right, your left-hand side of that slide is the first piece of work we did, which was in 2021 and 2022, where we partnered with the Aviation Authority, with UFlight, a research organisation in one of our universities, and with the Local Government Management Agency, which represents all the local authorities in Ireland. And we looked at best practice and what really could be applied in Ireland. And we also produced 2 very useful handbooks for drone operators and drone pilots in the local authorities, which are around the regulations and around data protection, because they were 2 of the big issues that came up in the public research. And from then now we've moved on this year to start looking at a drone strategy specifically for the organisation, and that's looking again at how we can expand our own use. And part of that then in all the public research is, in the research of public sentiment, is how people support public use of drones for public good. So I think we have a real role there in just developing that, using our own services as a way to build public awareness and acceptance. And the other thing then that we're about to embark on, the other stream of that strategy is our role in the ecosystem. So we're looking with the Aviation Authority again and Maynooth University at, you know, what does a city with drones operating in it look like? What are the rules? What are the exclusion areas? How do you do spatial planning based on that? And also, what's the role of local government versus the regulator? So they're all things that are being explored in Dublin.
Yeah, very good, exciting. Thank you very much, Giovanni.
Thank you, Lorenzo, and good afternoon, everyone. I am Giovanni Di Antonio, Director of Technological Innovation at ENAC, the Italian Civil Aviation Authority. And my new department at national level deals with the development of commercial space transportation and spaceport development. We are working hard to develop regulations for spaceport and suborbital flights, access to orbit and re-entry. And we are also working to develop the first spaceport in Italy, which is Grottaglie Spaceport in the Apulia region. And at international level, I am also honored to also chair the JARUS, the Joint Authorities for Rulemaking on Unmanned Systems, which of course has produced the SORA, just to say something, no, Lorenzo? Thanks to Lorenzo especially. And, you know, JARUS is an organization of 64 national aviation authorities, plus EASA and Eurocontrol, and has the aim to recommend performance-based regulation that may be endorsed by the members, by the regional authorities to build their own regulatory frameworks. And of course, JARUS has, probably I can speak on that a little bit later, has produced a number of enablers in terms of regulation for the advanced air mobility in these years. Thank you.
Thank you. And Marcel.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. It's really lovely to be here. Bern is my hometown. I'm Marcel Kägi. I work for the Swiss Civil Aviation Authority, which is right over there. My division that I co-lead together with Francine, who is also here in the audience, looks at aviation strategy and policy. The FOCA, my organization, has 4 divisions. 3 look at safety oversight, and we basically do all the rest. So not only the cool stuff like Giovanni, but also sort of the more bureaucratic stuff like in coordinating political affairs with our ministry, with parliament, international affairs, our membership in EASA, for example, our 150 air services agreements with other countries, as well as economic matters, how to regulate airport charges, or how to regulate our ANSP, and also sustainability, environmental protection, those issues. But the issues that are most to my heart, which is the ones we discuss here, is how to integrate new technologies in the airspace. Behind me you can see a picture of our aviation strategy, which has a lot of numbers and letters on it. They all link to specific elements of that strategy, which state our ambition, which with regard to drones is to make it as easy as possible to fly at scale, but while at the same time maintaining safety and the other public interests we need to protect. And we have a clearly stated ambition here, but of course what's much more difficult than stating ambitions is to figure out how to actually do it. And for that, I think we have a culture of discussing with industry, with innovators on an eye-to-eye level. So I'm really here to learn. I'm looking a lot forward to discussing with all of you. Already last year was eye-opening for me, and I'd like to close with thanking Esther and Lorenzo for organizing this in my hometown. It's really awesome to have such a broad audience from all over Europe here. It's great.
Thank you very much, Marcel. Thank you. And Sebastian.
So I'm Sebastian. I'm the Director General of the Office of Economic Affairs in the Canton of Bern. I'm the former head of building up an innovation policy on the national level for the National Ministry of Economic Affairs. And I have a background in aviation and chemistry, I think, which is like 15 years ago, and a little more in science, where my roots are. I'm not born here, but I'm also living here, and very happy to be with you. I'm a little bit more exotic than all of you here because I'm not in. I have my heart in aviation. I've been working in aviation industry for more than 10 years, and I'm a private helicopter pilot, which, because it's private, is a financial disaster. I can assure you. But it's really to the bottom of my heart that we are in all these topics. Besides that, and that's probably the role why I'm here, I'm the president of the Bern Economic Development Agency, which made this event, among others, possible for today and last year. And 2 of my team members are here, so please feel free to talk to us. We're really convinced that this pioneering role that we should have for you to have more cool stuff in your hometown city, that this pioneering role is crucial, and that somebody needs to move on in topics where others are talking and where we try to offer something or enable something. So talk to us about innovation, talk to us about innovation promotion, about building new companies. A couple of new companies that have arrived in our area are here as well. And we are in the background normally, but very happy to be able and enable whatever your ideas are.
Excellent. I mean, and I'm sure the astute of you would have noticed that we actually have a city, a canton, a CAA, Department of Transport, all the way up to kind of an international organization. We're really trying to cover the entire vertical here, right? And I was thinking where to start, from the top or from the bottom. And I think in the case of aerial cities, we need to start with the cities, right? And really start to ask the key question, like what's going on in 2023 in the city of Dublin. Now, obviously, you are here, Eileen, so there is relevance to the topic of drones for the city. And we are curious to understand where are you as a city of Dublin with the adoption of drone technology? Like at which state are we talking about? We're still at the vision. Are we already moving towards implementation? Are we scaling? Okay, that will be for next year probably. But where are we? Just give us a bit of a flavor of what's going on in your city.
Well, I suppose there's 2 aspects to it. There's our own use. So our drone flights or drone operations would be, they're moderate enough. There's about 300 flights per year. We have, I think, 20 drones, and we have 20 different business units that would regularly enough have drone flights. But we do see there's considerable potential there for us to expand that. And the more that the technology evolves and the more we're able to do like ground penetrating radar or, you know, different types of thermal imaging, we can expand across our range of services. So there's huge potential for us, for our emergency services, for our building inspections, for our environmental monitoring and regulation. So there's just right across the board in our services, we see potential for drones. So that's really what we're doing now organizationally. Like I said at the start, there was this enthusiasm. Lots of people went out and got drones and then realized, oh, actually, I need to be a competent pilot. I need to do this regularly. I need to comply with regulations. So what we're doing is trying to consolidate our drone operations now into our survey and mapping division and our fire services. So they would be the 2 main users. So we can develop our competence, develop our expertise, have a group of people that can look across other cities, other areas, other sectors and see what can we bring in, what do we need to do in the city council. And the other role that we see is around public awareness, public acceptance, listening to the citizens and the communities of Dublin to say what are their priorities for how we should use drones and how drones maybe should be part of the city infrastructure and the city priorities. So that's very much where we are organisationally. The local government sector then is to greater or lesser extents using drones, but I think because we are quite big, we have the resource, we have the opportunity and the different scenarios, what we learn can then be rolled out across the local government sector. So there's a lot of learning and sharing to be done. And then in terms of city policy, we're at a very early stage in that. I mean, there are some private drone operators. I know Mana have a very robust service out in the north of the county, which would be outside of Dublin City Council's area, so we don't necessarily have any actual private drone services operating within the city. But we do need to look at that and see, like we have a strategic development plan, horizon of 10 years now. We've just done our most recent plan last year, so there is this time now we need to look and be ready for the next iteration of that development plan to be able to look at things like takeoff and landing. What type of infrastructure do we need to support? How are drones going to be part of the traffic management system that we're responsible for? But as I said, we're at a very early stage there. There isn't a huge amount of work done there, but we have a partnership now with the IAA where we're going to start actually exploring that and seeing where do we go from here.
Thank you very much. It's good to hear the perspective of like the city as an operator and then as a city as an enabler, like you need to enable your own operator. I also love the idea of these early 300 enthusiasts, you know, that go out. I remember when I was working at FOCA back in like 10 years ago, our former director used to call us, me and Marcel, the enthusiasten, you know, because you are the guys that go out there and dream about things, and then the hard reality comes at you, right? So, I mean, for you, Sebastian, I mean, as a in terms of development agency, right? So you are here also to support companies, to some extent to support those enthusiasts, you know, and also somehow then to support them at times when the reality hits pretty hard, and you're like, okay, what do we do now? And again, I'm one of them now on the other side. But how do you see this from the perspective of somebody that's trying to help here, like the industry to grow?
Well, it's a personal choice that you need to make, even as a public office or as a public officer. We are very convinced that, of course, we have high precision manufacturing, we have our pharmaceutical industry, we have our watch industry in the heart of our canton. The two largest watch producers in the world are sitting 300 meters next to each other in one of our cities. That is all fine, that is all existing, but besides that, you need to be more dynamic in those economic ecosystems. And the more enthusiasts we find, the better. And part of them, some of them might be dreamers, some of them might be irrealistic or surrealistic, but that's part of the game. And you need to find people and authorities that take you at the hand and say, okay, let's try. And one of our key roles, what our companies tell us quite often is, you know, there's a lot of people who say, I'm going to help you, but I'm not going to be the first one. Find someone who makes the first move, and this is probably one of the key roles we can be as an innovation agency, as a promotion agency. We are the first mover, and because we are a little more independent, I shouldn't say so in front of politicians, but we are a little more independent with what we can do. We can go a little farther than others. We don't have a board that we need to justify each and every step and each and every moment, or Swiss franc even. And so this is one of the key roles we can provide, and this is one of the key roles that young startups, new founders, but also established companies tell us, keep going on to pursue that track, because others will follow. So thank you for being enthusiastic.
Thank you. And, you know, the reality in this case has the name of Marcel, right? Because, you know, somehow you will be the one that brings us back. And I mean, it's interesting in which sense is like, as an aviation authority, we are used to be the owner of the airspace, the manager of the airspace, and all of these cities and scattered things used not to be a problem, right? But now they are, and actually not a problem, they need to be part of the solution, right? So the question is, like, from a FOCA perspective now, how do you see the progress that has been made? Also from last year, you were here and talking about that. It's like, do we know these, did we make progress in understanding of the roles, of the responsibilities? The U-Space project you're running, of course, in Zurich must have helped clarify those. Can you give us a perspective of like, what have you learned in the last year in terms of these connections?
Sure, but first and foremost, we don't own the airspace. It's a public good, right? And we are charged with ensuring that there is equity how this public good can be used. So we need to figure out ways to make sure how new entrants can also use this public good without having to bear crazy costs that are not justified. So this is one of the neat challenges we are working on. But talking about progress, I thought a little bit about this morning, and given the fact that this is not sort of an event where we have a lot of other regulators in the audience, I can be a bit undiplomatic and then maybe also give you a little bit the personal opinion, because I mean we are the government, right? And the government there's a stereotype about the government that it's pretty slow, and obviously it's exaggerated. We have an awesome team working on all that stuff, and we try to be as fast as we can. But there's also some truth to that stereotype that we are not very fast. Especially if there's no pressure from the outside. And I think that's maybe something we can discuss about later, somehow what sort of this consolidation phase that Esther, I think, outlined it a bit in her speech in the beginning, saying it's a difficult year. What that means in terms of advocacy for your industry, and what kind of pressures that puts on us, because at the moment, and also in the past few years, we are subject to your industry coming to us with lots of, not very loud, but lots of different voices telling us what they want in terms of changes in regulation, in terms of digital infrastructure such as U-Space, and we are not faced with one or two big lobbies that tell us this is the direction we want to go into. And in my opinion, it's almost impossible to move bigger legislative projects or also financial projects if only the government sort of pulls. We need a push from the outside that tells us, we want you to do this, we want you to do U-Space over Zurich. And thinking about this morning, I thought, like, this is really the role the regions and the cantons in Switzerland have played in this example, Zurich. They came and said, we want U-Space, we want the first U-Space, and we want it now, move quickly. And this helped us a lot to move the project forward, because it's not trivial, especially if you are the first. We have an awesome team working on it. Some of them are here. Feel free to talk to them later. They're more knowledgeable about this than me. But you need to do risk assessment. You need to go convince general aviation pilots to buy ADS-B equipment, stuff like that. You need all kinds of stakeholders that you can't influence directly to be part of the game. If you do this just as an authority with an innovation section or with the aviation policy division, also if you have a minister and a director that also want this, it's almost not feasible. So I think what I'd love to see from industry, and what I'm still not seeing, is having a clear advocacy, a clear vision what they want from regulation, from government. But I see sort of as a silver lining or something positive is that I see more and more that the regions and the cities take that role. They come to us, they formulate an expectation, and we deliver. And I think this is really still quite an optimistic development.
I like this version of you, Marcel, like a proper push. This is good. This is good. That's what we want. But it's super important. You know, it's like associations. You know, not only of cities, but association of cities. We have Vasilis here somewhere in the audience that is trying to do that. You know, associations of our own industry. Like, where are they? Are they pushing in the right direction? Are they pushing at all? I mean, this is a key question we need to ask ourselves. And maybe, Darryl, what is your perspective in the UK? It's not Switzerland, but you are also faced with a lot of pressures from all over the place.
Yeah.
You have a more consolidated view from the industry, from the cities. You face the same challenges. How do you approach the challenge here?
Well, you may have seen me nodding along vigorously while Marcel was speaking, because yeah, lots of commonalities in the things you were saying there. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to be in the position I'm in for the last 12 months, and when I joined the team, my team, who are absolutely fantastic, had a spreadsheet that had 150 things they absolutely had to do, that industry was telling them they had to do now in order to unlock this sector. And I don't know if any of you in the room have had a 150-row spreadsheet and felt quite empowered and focused. That is not, in my experience, a recipe for kind of clever pace and strategy. So I think what we've in the UK managed to do over the last 12 months is to take that 150 rows and get some clarity on what the industry really wants. And we've done that through something called our Future of Flight Industry Group. We brought together, under the joint chairmanship of our aviation minister and actually the CEO of Skyports, who I see represented down here, co-chairing an industry group with the regulator, with key people across the sector on drones and eVTOLs, local authorities involved as well, in order to develop where do we want to get to, what's the vision, what are the key outcomes we need, the 5 key outcomes we need to realise that vision, and then what are the specific things that will help us deliver those outcomes. And that 150-row spreadsheet is now in the bin. We've got a clear path to where we go to through delivery. So, in answer to your first question, we're still in that vision outcome setting phase, but with a clearer path through now. But it's not, that is no way to say this is going to be straightforward. particularly some of the decisions we made in the UK about immediately moving to integrated airspace. We have 60-some ANSPs. This is going to be quite a challenge for us in the UK, and some of these airspace questions are going to be need a lot of work over the coming years.
Thank you very much. It's an interesting perspective of how the DFT in this case can actually steer as well. Right? Not only waiting for the industry to do something, but like take a proactive stance and say, okay, I'm gonna now do something myself, right, to solve my own problem. And I'm gonna throw this back at Marcel in the next question. But before doing that, I mean, Giovanni, Giovanni here represents like primarily Jaros, right? And I mean, again, we are all, I mean, at least me, Marcel, and Giovanni, we've been there, and Jaros is this group of like 64 Marcels that show up, plus another 200 or 300, industry experts and whatsoever, and all putting pressure on ultimately the chairmanship to develop recommendations, develop regulation, help us to do what we need to do. So you have a very privileged position, Giovanni, right? Because you see these challenges literally from all over the planet. So can you give us a perspective of where do you think the global community is in the challenge of integration of drones, right? In cities, of course, but more in general in the airspace.
Yes, thank you for the question. And yes, if we look at the ecosystem from an increasingly distant perspective, you of course see cities, regions, states, but you also see many international organizations that are active in, for example, in the advanced air mobility issue, not only Jaros, no? And the question is why? Because the advanced air mobility is primarily a local issue, why international organizations should take care about that? But simply because the international community always sees at the harmonization for interoperability. There is a strong interest in promoting safety and a safe interoperability around the globe, because it is a primary interest for industry in order to expand the market, but also for the society in order to have a more competitiveness for the services that can be provided to citizens. So it is for that recently, as you may know, following the last assembly, ICAO assembly in September 2022, it has been decided to set up a study group at ICAO, the Advanced Air Mobility Study Group, which has the mainly aim to work on the global vision of the advanced air mobility, not in terms of developing CONOPS, but just to provide input how to develop a global CONOPS, and to carry out an exploratory work to identify those issues that should be addressed in order to enable this ecosystem. And Jaros is exactly working at that level of implementation, because Jaros has an history of 15 years. This year we have celebrated the 15 years anniversary in Ottawa, and we as Jaros are working on, let me say, pieces of recommendation for regulation that are actually enablers for that may support the development of advanced air mobility. For example, one of the key issues we are working on is automation, and everybody knows that without automation the business case will not be viable, will not be sustainable. And Jaros, for example, since years is working on, first of all, developing the SORA, but also evolving the SORA in a more quantitative way, able to be implemented in an automated way. But we are also developing a concept of operations for automation and automation of the vehicles, but also of the airspace, and to try to understand how automation could be addressed at the regulatory level, not simple task. Then we are developing a requirement for multiple simultaneous operations of drones, and you can imagine how important it is for the innovative air mobility, for the good delivery, to have the possibility to manage different drones with just one supervisor, no? And other requirements for other technical requirements in terms of artificial intelligence, for example. So a lot of pieces of regulation that put all together may enable the ecosystem. But the important here is that all this effort has to be coordinated. So from that, there is the need to coordinate and collaborate at international level with ICAO, JARUS, and all the other organizations, because resources, every international organization today has limited resources, and we need to make our work efficient, avoiding duplication of effort. It is for that that if we want to take pace with the evolution of the technology and with the increasing demand of services from society, we need to, let me say, agree the tasks among different subjects. So we are as JARUS, we are working on this direction in order to coordinate and collaborate with ICAO, but it is a very fundamental point in order to let also the national level to run fast on that.
Thank you, Giovanni. And I mean, just from the first round, you know, what I heard is that, you know, we are doing something in the cities, right? Still at limited scale, right? I think that's fine. And, you know, some of the challenges of doing that at scale are not being solved because there is not enough pressure from the right industry groups to pretty much put the money where the money needs to be, like developing use spaces and developing UTMs and things like that. And that this pressure should come again from the cities as well, or, you know, from the cantons or from the industry that needs to elevate the pressure. On the other side, I've heard, you know, interesting from Darryl was like, yes, of course we need the pressure, but we can also take a proactive role here and we can start to steer. And, you know, maybe we are more aware of the needs than those who need to do pressure sometimes. So let's put them all together and push, right? So I feel like this pull and push discussion deserves a little bit more exploration. So maybe I would like to restart from you, Darryl. Like, can you give us a bit of an understanding of like how does it look like to actually, you know, be the one that is pushing? You know, it's an interesting point of view.
Thanks, Lorenzo. So perhaps I'll slightly mischaracterize that. I feel a lot of pressure from the sector, and I wouldn't like to suggest that we are not having lots of drone operators in the UK telling us we need to move faster. We absolutely do. I think our solution to that has been let's use government's power to convene, let's use government's power to coordinate in order to get that shared view, government and industry, about where we need to get to. So that's where I talk about our Future of Flight Industry Group and our Future of Flight Action Plan, which we'll publish in the next couple of months. That's our attempt to get this joint government, industry, regulator view of where we need to, or what we need to do. I think where the other part of it, and where perhaps the work moves more closely into what we're seeing in cities, is where government can also support with demonstrations, where we've been fortunate enough in the UK to have a £300 million programme over the last few years, our Future Flight Challenge, to fund various aspects of drone and eVTOL development, including eVTOL flights, including lots of different types of drone operations in urban and semi-urban environments, and using that learning to feed back into the system. But I think my other reflection on what we've heard so far is how important it is for governments to talk to regulators, to talk to cities. All of the actors represented on this panel, it's probably the first one I've seen made up in this way, and long may it continue, because there's so much we need to learn from each other and share with each other.
Thanks. And Marcel, I'm sure you're going to be jealous about all the millions of pounds, you know, that are being spent, you know, considering the policy, you know, the long-standing policy of Switzerland in that regards. But like you were asking, you made a good plea of like, organize yourself and come to us and help us to push, right? And, you know, on the other side, what can you do as an authority to organize the industry as well as some of the cities, right? Is there something that you can also do yourself as an authority, like, I don't know, creating a group such as this one, or any other initiative that you already have made, perhaps, or are thinking of making?
Yeah, it's a good point, and maybe I was a bit negative before. I mean, we have a clear vision what we think the drone industry needs in terms of regulation, policy, digital infrastructure, which is pretty simple. I mean, we have SORA, thanks to many people here, especially Lorenzo, which allows us to issue authorizations that minimize sort of compliance with unnecessary stuff. So, and by doing that, lowers the market entry barrier and makes it possible that smaller companies can sell services or sell products. However, the things that these companies still need to do to mitigate the risk, especially the air risk, they're still too expensive to mitigate at scale, as Giovanni, you pointed out, because we don't know where all the aircraft are, and we are lacking processes to issue authorizations and then implement the respective mitigations to deal with the air risk in an efficient manner. We think we want to solve this with U-Space, a portion of airspace where the use of services is mandatory, where everybody who flies needs to be cooperative. And then we want to figure out, which is something we already work on, is how the use of these services can then facilitate issuing approvals and make mitigations within these approvals more efficient. That's clear. But at the same time, we are focused with many more approval requests that we can handle, because our resources are pretty static, right? And then we get lots of interest from different regions saying, yeah, why not do a U-Space here? Why not do a U-Space in uncontrolled airspace or stuff like that? And I mean, we have an idea how we prioritize, but are we correct? I don't know. I want to, and I really love the Swiss system of sort of distribution of powers between different government levels, because no, this is, you rarely find a federal government employee saying this, but I really think it's good because it challenges the assumptions you make in this like federal government ivory tower, right? It's probably pretty straightforward that in Zurich it makes sense to do it, but other regions, Bern, is that the best? I'm sure, yeah, it's the best area, that's clear. But I mean, I like this idea of being challenged when it comes to resource allocation. And I mean, there I'm really pretty straightforward, at least in my experience within the Swiss government. Resource allocation is always a function of political pressure. And if it's sort of almost a bit cacophonous, if that word exists in English, right? Like many people saying contradictory things, we just do our best guess, but are we right? I don't know. So the strategies that we use to figure it out is, as I think, similar to the UK. We have private-public partnerships, such as the Swiss U-Space implementation, SUSI. We have different groups. We are currently rewriting our drone strategy. We're going to consult that widely. So we are really open, and we really mean it when I said in the beginning that we have this culture of trying to interact with industry, to learn from industry. We try to max that out, but in the end, I still think we need a little bit more articulation also at the political level to then really make the decision that puts the money where it needs to be, as Lorenzo put it.
Thank you. And maybe, Eileen, I want to come back to you, because I know Ireland has made some progress in these regards. You know, you have a national program in this respect, and you know, I guess Dublin is part of it. Can you tell us what is happening in Ireland, in Dublin specifically, on the topic of how do you influence your regulator? How do you influence your, you know, ministries eventually on build? Of course, you are Dublin, so they're kind of like the Zurich of Ireland. But you know, still, how do you solve this problem?
Well, I suppose we have taken the approach where we are open to, you know, facilitating the evolution of the drone ecosystem in Dublin. So we're very, I suppose, open about that and engaging, and all the work we have done so far has been on a collaborative basis. I'd fully agree with Darryl. Like, unless we have industry, regulator, city, everybody sitting around together trying to work this out, it's the type of thing where, I suppose, for one, in terms of smart cities, this is probably the most collaborative type of a project. You know, I find the industry very open, the regulator very open, very proactive. So it is a case where we sit down and just try and work out, what is this going to look like? Nobody really knows yet, but unless we're all sitting down together trying to figure it out, it's not going to work. So I suppose we're not really pushing, we're being collaborative and inviting people in and trying to just sit down and work together, because there will be more and more demands as, I suppose, drone operations become more familiar in the city and more, I suppose, visible. Then we will come up against political issues, against community issues, and, you know, public perception issues. That all that needs to be balanced you know, in the wider scheme of trying to facilitate this industry, realising the impact it's going to have on how the city operates, and then trying to deal with the different perspectives that there are, and just balancing all that so that you're actually getting, you know, a good proper strategy and a good rollout and an acceptance that this is now going to be, you know, in a few years' time, an absolutely fundamental way that the city works, and we just as a local authority recognise that and I suppose want to be part of it.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to give all of you some time to start to, you know, use your Slido and start ask questions to our audience. So giving you time to do that, I would like to have like a one flash from every one of you in terms of, I understand that all of you have kind of a significant amount of experience with, you know, the challenge of integrating drones, the aviation ecosystem, etc. And, you know, I would like to go back, if you go back to your last, I don't know, 3-5 years, and you have to say that the one thing that in your experience is still limiting this industry from scaling, right? At your level, at the level of the city, at the level of the ministry, at the level of the authority, what do you think is the one thing that we are still have not solved, you know, in the direction of scale? And maybe, Sebastian, you said before, I'm not a drone, you know, a person, but still you have a very privileged standpoint as well. So I would like to start from you, and then quickly, and then I think we would like to open for the question from the other. But I would like to really get this. What do you think is limiting us right now?
Might be a bit dangerous what I'm telling you, but
yes, go for it.
But I would like to back up on what Marcel said before. I think one of the limiting factors right now, I mean, look at where governmental bodies are right now. They come out of trying to stabilize an economy out of a pandemic. That's what basically all the governments are doing right now. So they take a deep breath again and are happy that a couple of years what we've spent our time on is over. So the moment is right to speak out loud with one voice, and if you can't speak out as one voice as an industry, at least speak out as a coordinated industry. And this is nothing specific to drone industry. We see this a lot in other areas as well, where particular interests, smaller particular interests, are coming up to the government level, and government actually needs to decide whom to listen to first. And governments are not good in deciding whom to listen to first. So do that task for them. Prioritize your ideas, your needs and your interests. I mean, I will not, if Zurich is doing a U-Space in Switzerland, that's a fantastic idea. So it's not my job to ask a U-Space in Bern, because that wouldn't help you, that wouldn't help us, and it wouldn't happen. So this is not a good priority to do right now. At least let's make sure that it's happening in Switzerland. That's the big issue, and that's the priority, and that's where we can support. But that's also something for you. So where can you identify your priorities? Where can you coordinate better amongst you, that it's easier for the governmental layers and bodies to say, okay, this is not only coming from one side. This is obviously a big need and a big challenge that we need to address first.
Thank you very much. Marcel, give us another one, because I know this is number one priority. Give you the second one.
I'll be much shorter, but thanks. It's very well said. I think it's uncooperative GI aircraft. Very simple.
Very good. So everybody keeps. Everybody keeps this. Okay, that's very good. Thank you, Giovanni.
I think for sure the UTM, youth space implementation will be an enabler, and also the harmonization of regulation between air regulation and local regulation, because advanced air mobility has to have a distributed infrastructure on the land, and that means that aviation regulation has to match with the local one. This is a challenge.
Thank you very much. And Eileen?
I would say what probably will be the biggest challenge is that the local government can keep pace with what the demands of the industry and the development of the technology needs to be, how we can support that and keep pace with it.
Thank you. And Darryl?
Short-term airspace integration, how we bring these new technologies into a system which has been an airspace system which has been largely unchanged for decades, and where safety is absolutely paramount. That's key. And then long term, I think the size of particularly the drone and AAM sectors, is going to be determined by public acceptance. So thinking short term about how you build that long term public acceptance is going to be important for the size of this sector.
Very good. Thank you very much. And it worked. You know, you get a lot of questions now with a lot of upvotes and downvotes. Please keep going with it. So I mean, I think the most upvoted question here from Dominic is again, I think it's going in your direction, Darryl, the question for CAA representatives. What steps are you taking to satisfy new airspace requirements of the drone industry in relation to traditional aviation, right? So of course the answer would be use space, very good, but like give us more detail, maybe Marcel and then you, Darryl. What step are you taking to do that? How do you consider, you mentioned uncooperative traffic, like are you making mandatory equipage for everybody? Is this what we're going to do?
Yeah, I'll try to keep it brief. I could talk about this for ages, but I showed you this picture in the beginning of our airspace strategy. The strategy clearly states that we want all aircraft to become cooperative in a sensible way. But again, the question is how to get there and when to get there. And what we are trying to do is just to speed that process up, because we learned from our approval work, and there are colleagues here in the audience who do that work on a daily basis. And I think what I will tell you is that if we would know where all the aircraft are based on some reasonable standard, it would be so much easier to issue these BVLOS approvals and to allow drones to scale. Now, use space obviously is one strategy to solve it, but in size it's limited, and we are just learning how much work it is to establish a portion of airspace as use space. The risk assessment is really non-trivial. I've almost come through it. I'm optimistic we're making it. But then you need to consult, and there all the airspace users, you need to respect lengthy processes to publish physically printed maps according to some ICAO standard. It all takes ages, and we're going through this pain, and I hope other states will do so too. But I think they only will do it if people tell them to, right? So what we're trying to do is sort of clearly state the vision that everybody, the future is being cooperative. Everybody needs to use equipment that makes them visible. The EASA ADSL framework, I think, helps in this way. We're trying to figure out what that means in practice at the moment. And we're trying to communicate that. We're trying to put it in practice. We're also looking systematically at the AirProx safety reports from our NTSB. And also try to analyze that and implementing synergies between addressing these safety recommendations while at the same time having this equity piece in mind when it comes to access to airspace. I don't know if that answers the question.
Thank you. I mean, well, cooperative for all, it's a big statement, so thank you very much. Second question, it's like very nice, all of what we're talking about, but how can we enable real BVLOS operations like in the short term, while aiming for perfection in the long term? I love the word perfection. It indicates a certain state of mind of the anonymous questionnaire. But the point is, it's a good point. You know, while we are debating all these philosophical challenges, you know, companies might be dying out there because they cannot actually scale, right? They cannot actually achieve scale in BVLOS. Maybe this is more for you, Darryl. You have, I mean, you have done pilot projects. You have maybe some experience on what can be the quick wins, you know, that can enable more operation at scale, while indeed we develop the entire system for everybody else.
Yeah, it's a great question. I was really tickled actually by the points about general aviation, and actually, Marcel, your earlier point about the political nature of some of this work. We had up until 12 months ago, our transport secretary of state was a GA pilot, which brought kind of particular challenges. So the actual question, sorry, we're trying to take an iterative approach. So in the short term, where there's lots of atypical airspace, I don't know if that's a common phraseology across Europe and in UK. Where can we use atypical airspace to start with to allow BVLOS operations? And we're seeing companies such as CAI in the UK starting to get permissions from our UK Civil Aviation Authority to do, for example, surveys of overhead power lines in using BVLOS. And the nature of those areas being there won't be GA aircraft in them to give the CA comfort over the safety. And then it's doing those number of times to build up that safety record on a company basis. And then more broadly, started with restricted airspace, temporary danger areas, working towards transistor mandatory zones. So we require everyone to have some sort of EC device, and gradually scaling over time, again, demonstrating safety, getting that data so that we can get the regulator into a place where they're happy to sign off more and more operations. But totally echo the point made earlier. This will take time, and unfortunately we've got. I'm still trying to get the temperature of the people in the room and who's represented here. But I imagine there's lots of innovators here who have created some great tech and want to move quickly, and you're coming up against a system which, as I said before, is long established and hasn't changed much. So there's a tension there, and it's going to be difficult. It's going to be bumpy. I'd encourage people to just work with the regulators. Where I've seen it work well in the UK has been companies that have engaged early, tried to target bits of airspace where safety risks are low, and developing iteratively in that way.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We have a question from Juliana about the communication strategy about AAM. And what is the best way to communicate with the local community, users, and potential future workforce? We have heard about AAM. Of course, is a very, very hot topic since a long time, and I have heard all sort of perspective. From those who say it's a technology push to all the way on the other side that says this is gonna change our lives. In terms of sustainability, travel times, etc., etc. Like, how do we need to communicate this to the local communities to foster earlier adoption, possibly better adoption? What do you think from a Dublin perspective?
Well, I suppose in the first piece of work we did, where we were looking at the best practice, we did a national survey to gauge public perception, and there was a very high level of acceptance and tolerance of drones. I think it was over 80%. And what people put priority on, as I said at the beginning, was where we're using drones for the common good, or for what people would perceive to be emergency situations, rescue, environmental monitoring, things that are in the public interest. So that's where we want to start, and with the new unit that we're going to put in place, part of their remit will be about communication and engagement. So we'll be looking at demonstrator projects in local areas with local communities, where we're actually going out and engaging with people around specific use cases and projects, just to see what's the perception there. But the other part of it is we need to be absolutely transparent and, fully compliant and open about our own drone operations, so that people can see, what's that drone doing there? That's Dublin City Council. What are they doing it for? And that kind of openness and transparency and being clear about our data protection guidelines and what we follow, that's all part of building public trust and acceptance.
Thank you. I love the next question. I mean, I'm almost tempted of answering it myself. Like, have we really made substantial progress, right? Or are we still in front of a huge pile of challenges that need to be worked before anything becomes tangible, right? It's actually a very fair question. I don't know who asked it, but it's a very fair question, right? Because it's, again, this idea of the enthusiast and that then slumps against the reality. And the challenge that I think from my side, I mean, I can leave it, I was the reality before, and now I am the enthusiast again, right? And the challenge is when you are the reality, you don't really care about the enthusiast too much if they don't organize themselves and start to do the right thing, And from my perspective, I agree that we are still not organized properly, and we are not doing necessarily the right things. Right? And the challenge is you keep bumping against the regulators, which are there and say, hey, I'm here to help, but you need to start to do the right thing. You're not going to fly over cities with uncertified, unverified aircrafts. So you need to start to verify them and certify them. If your organizations are wobbly and you don't have proper management systems, we will not trust you. We'll not give you any privilege, right? If your operations cannot deal with simple incidents and worst-case accidents, I'm sorry, but you're not qualified to operate at scale. And these positions are there since the beginning, right? Because aviation is this, I think, and it's not going to change for us. They will not. It's still going to be there, now and in 10 years. It's us that we need to start to adapt and understand those needs. And if real change is required, I think like use space or, imagine about cooperation for all manned aircraft or crewed aircraft, sorry. That's something that we as an industry need to start to really organize ourselves and push, otherwise it's not going to happen, right? It's about, remember that the challenge with the model airplanes here in Switzerland, two groups, but no, it's a very interesting fact. You have the entire drone regulation stalled for more than a year because we didn't properly account for the fact that the Model Airplane Association are very powerful people, and they didn't like it. So if we cannot even fight the Model Airplane Association, how are we going to go and take over, the other challenges? So I think, sorry for a little bit of ranting, but I think there is definitely a lot of stuff that we need to do as an industry to make sure to break through the regulators. And I don't know if you guys agree or I'm too negative on this. Anybody that wants to, please.
I don't think that you're too negative. Irrespective of the fact whether there's substantial progress or not, there's no choice of not doing it.
Yes.
I think that's the important message. Let me give you, and I really try to be as short as possible. Let me give you an example which might be related, but is not really dedicated to drones. This is electrical aviation. A couple of years ago, we started a program. I'm sitting on the board of directors of our airport here in Bern. We started a program to get attention and to bring together actors, researchers from electrical aviation vehicle flying partners. We're doing this for a couple of years now, and if I am asked by our political leaders what's the success and what's the outcome and do you proceed, the honest answer is no. The real answer is nonetheless we have to do it because nobody else is doing it, and if this industry tries to catch up and talk to each other and get connections between industrial players, academics, engineers and authorities, somebody has to do it. Otherwise it's not going to happen anyway. So I always say, don't ask me about the short-term success. We are convinced that we need to do it, so let's do it and let's continue. That's the honest answer for have we made substantial progress? Yes or no, but none, irrespective of the answer, we have to continue.
Thank you very much. It's a positive statement. I think I like that. I mean, there is no choice. Like if we want to continue to exist as an industry, we need to keep pushing and pushing in the right direction. So thank you very much. Let's see if we have time. I think for another one question. I think one more question, and then we need to close. I'm gonna pick one that we didn't maybe answer yet. Yes, I mean there is a question about the airworthiness of drones, which I think we kind of answered, and somebody is asking the 3 biggest barriers to achieve scalable UTM or AAM operations in your region. So we could say maybe for you as a closing question, what are the biggest challenges in Dublin to achieve scalable AM, UTM operations? Like, difficult one to answer, but
I suppose we're not really quite there yet for me to be able to answer that. It's part of the work we're doing on the strategy and this project, the innovation project that we're going to start on to actually just try and unpack all that and come up with those. But we're not, I mean, from an organizational point of view, we're able to expand, we're able to grow because, of the type of operations that we're doing. But as a general, in terms of developing city policy, I don't think I'm quite able to answer that yet. We have a bit more work to do before we
It's a very good answer, actually. It's a very good answer because it indicates this still, again, work that has to be made. Very good. So thank you very much. I think from my perspective, I mean, I was moderating this panel last year, right? And as a closing remark, you can feel that it was a tough year. Like it was a tough year, 2023, for everybody, right? A lot of work has to be done. A lot of work requires a lot of money. If companies are not profitable yet, this money has to come from investors. Investors don't want to get burned, in spending money without returns. And you can feel that there is a difficulty out there to progress and move forward. And of course, again, I think from the government side, there is a lot of I think really attempts to help, also cries for help as well, like organize yourself and be more vocal about what you really need. But I mean, definitely progress has been made, but I also feel lots more have to be done, right? We are still far from where we should be as far as scaling, operating, and really reaping the benefits of this industry. But so thank you very much for being the reality check of real cities. I think from now on it's going to be much more optimistic, the whole event. But it's very important. I think we love to say here we don't like to to go around and dream about fantasies. Here we want to see what is the reality, and this is the reality out there. So we need to all be aware of what it is and equip for it. So thank you very much for playing this difficult role. Thank you.